Get your takes on the Lions here because you're one of the foremost experts on them. You've been covering them for a long time. And one of the things that I jotted down as far as notes with you, you've been covering this team for a long time. Obviously, now we're living in a different era of the Lions. This Campbell era has been very different. It just occurred to me when I was sitting down and getting ready for the season, this is really a fun team to cover. This has to be one of your favorite eras to cover, I would think.
Oh, yeah, and that starts at the top with Dan, just being who he is. He's so refreshingly candid. He doesn't try to deceive. He answers questions honestly. He gives you straight information. When he says something that's what he means. He's not giving lip service. It's very, very different from really both of his predecessors. Matt Patricia it's tough because off the field and away from football, he was a genuinely good person, but he put that guy away and never let him out, never let anybody around the facility know, especially the players. He wasn't too bad with the media. Jim Caldwell was awful to cover as a coach. He hated the media. He made sure that it was adversarial. He never said anything. His press conferences were effectively pointless. He instructed the players not to talk to us too much. So, having Dan and a lot of the players, a lot of the coaches on the team are former players who were known for being good with the media. Guys like Mark Brunell, the quarterback's coach. Kelvin Sheffer, the defensive coordinator, was a fantastic talker as a player. He still is as a defensive coordinator. So there's this mission of being upfront and straightforward that permeates well below Dan, and we benefit from it as the media. Fans benefit from it because it allows us to understand a lot better what's going on with the team. They're not hiding things. They're very upfront, and I do think that makes you. And then there's some fun guys. JMO is a riot. You never know what he's going to say. He's another guy. He doesn't really have a filter. It's just sort of stream of consciousness. Terry Arnold is a great guy to cover. Sam Laporte, a very fun, sly guy to cover. I love covering. I've known Alex Anzalone for a while. Great guy to cover. So yeah, it's a very fun team, and the fact that they're really good helps too.
Definitely. And that's interesting comparing the coaches. I mean, I think a lot of people would be behind you on the Patricia thing because he really didn't get a lot of traction at any level, fan, press, what have you. Caldwell, that's an interesting observation because I know he's got a good reputation around the league, but he's a little bit old school, so I can kind of see being like that. I want to talk about Campbell a little bit more now that you're saying that, because one thing that I've always found interesting about him, and now with the coordinators leaving, I'm curious to get your take on this, because I think as a society sometimes we tend to try to make people one thing in order to understand them. And so we have to put them under an archetype. And with Dan Campbell, his archetype is tough-minded football guy. He played blocking tight end. He wants to bite you on the kneecaps. And then he got there, and he's shown a lot more nuance than that. And I'm sure you've seen it a lot more and through reading Lions Wire and a bunch of the other great writers on the beat. I've learned more about it. You get to see it a lot more, but I'm curious about kind of the pie chart and how you view it, because obviously a big storyline, almost every opposing beat writer that we bring on the show or people that cover other teams, they talk about them losing the two offensive coordinators. But I think because we make Campbell tough guy, kneecap biter, we overlook the fact that he's also culture creator and he's very smart as well. But I think personally that he downplays that a little bit. One, to be a good leader and make sure to defer the credit to some of the people that, because it is a full staff, it is a unit that is all working on this. He defers the credit to his people like a good leader. And I think it's to be underestimated a little bit so that some of the quote unquote smarter coaches, the Sean McVays of the world, may overlook him a little bit. Maybe a Ben Johnson says, hey, I can outthink Dan. I'm the smartest person in the room. And then he's underrated, and then he's able to sneak up on people.
You know, that's very much the way that most of us on the beat see Dan, is a guy who he's not going to come out and tell you how smart he is. Ben Johnson will do that. Sean McVay is a great example of somebody who will let you know how smart he is. Sean Payton, Dan's mentor, is like that too. But yeah, don't be fooled. Dan is a very sharp guy. I think the fact that he's not getting enough credit for the offense specifically, that so many people nationally are the offense just isn't going to be able to function without Ben Johnson. First off, that's crazy. But secondly, you're downplaying Dan Campbell. Don't underestimate him. Aside from the fact that he's got a tremendous culture and a great leadership, he's a pretty shrewd offensive mind too. The reason why they've gone for it so often on fourth down, that's Dan Campbell. The reason why they love to run and establish the run and play action off of it, that's very Dan Campbell. That goes back to when he played, playing under Bill Parcells and playing under Sean Payton and then coaching with Sean Payton. So his roots are in traditional football, but being aggressive at it. And, you know, Ben certainly offered a lot of window dressing to it that made it a lot more exciting. I think some of the exotic formations, the trick plays, the Lions have insisted that those aren't going to be going away, but they're not going to be the big staple of it. But, you know, there's still a lot of creativity on this team. John Morton comes in. One of the things that we've seen a lot of this summer, they're throwing the ball down the field more to more targets more often. So that makes them a little tougher to defend. One of the things that happens when you do that, and this is basic football things, and Dan Campbell understands this very well, and you've got Jamison Williams and Isaac TeSlaa on the outside and Sam Laporta going down the seam. You know, the linebackers and safeties have to go after those guys. Well, guess what? You got Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of the backfield. You got David Montgomery coming out of the backfield. Brock Wright is a solid number 2 tight end, gets all kinds of space. You get those guys into space with the spacing that they have. Those are fundamental concepts that, you know, Ben Johnson doesn't create that. That's Dan Campbell. That's the guys that he learned it from. And I think a lot of people who are expecting the offense to really regress are going to be in for it. And it's going to start Sunday because the Green Bay Packers have this whole new look, new toy defense, although Micah Parsons is apparently hurt and might not play, which doesn't make me sad at all. I think people are in for a rude awakening if they're sleeping on the Lions, and it sure seems like they are. Just looking around all the predictions right now, like everybody's picking Green Bay now, or some people are picking Minnesota. A good friend of mine, actually, Trevor Sycamore from PFF, picked the Lions to finish last. And I'm going to have some words with Trev later, but you know, we've talked behind the scenes about why he did, and I think he's doing exactly what you talked about. They're overplaying the Dan Campbell as a meathead, you know, not knowing what's going on type of thing, and Trev knows better, and I've told him that. But there's a lot of that going on, and I think that this team is very hungry to prove that, and the players have their coaches back on this one. And to a man, and you know this from being around sports, when the team is focused together on a collective goal, and it rises above the individuals, that's a very powerful thing.
I agree. That's a great point. And I kind of like that the narrative has shifted here, especially with, like you mentioned, the Parsons trade. That would be hilarious if he didn't play. I just talked to Jacob Wessendorf of Packers on SI in the previous segment, and he didn't mention that, but they've got some injury issues that I'm sure Dr. Liao will cover leading into the week. But there's a lot of injury issues headed into that game. And yes, he's a very talented player, but he just arrived there. So even if he plays, I don't think he's going to be peak Micah Parsons either. So that would be an interesting storyline there. But I think you hit the nail on the head with that description. And I like that. I like that they're the underdog this season. I think they're going to thrive in that role. I mean, a 15-2 team that did that. We all watched that last year. That did that with all the pieces they were missing on defense. They got a lot of players back. They added some players. They kept the culture. I think the guys that they have in the coaching staff are going to be strong. So I'm 100% with you. And I'm curious on your take. Pretty much I can't get out of a Lions related segment without talking about the guy, but he's a cool story. You're from here as well, and we talked about him on your last interview on the show. But the Isaac TeSlaa thing could really be a revelation here. The fact that they now kind of changed the math on the trade for the draft because they were able to get a 6th rounder out of Patrick. I liked Patrick, but I know he was kind of showing his age a little bit in camp. But now he's kind of swung. When he got picked, everybody was kind of saying, "Oh, they gave up too much for him." Now it's swung to people are probably taking him too early in their fantasy leagues. But I do think he's going to change some things because he's going to be able to do, I think, most of the things that Tim Patrick excelled at last year, but add a little more to it, even as a rookie.
Yeah, he's certainly faster than Tim Patrick. There's slower than most tight ends at this point. And that's one of the reasons why that they traded him. Look, Tim was a great guy. And Isaac will tell you this. Tim helps him a lot, get acclimated and get ready, taught him how to study defensive backs and things like that. And Isaac, there's a learning curve. He came from an Arkansas offense that was not good, to be charitable. And he's learning a new position. They played him in the slot as a 6'4", 215-pound guy. That doesn't make a lot of sense. And he's learning the X position in Detroit. He's playing a little bit all over the place, but primarily he's playing as the X, and that's a very different style of role. So it's important to keep the expectations for it. Like, I'll give the example. I had a fantasy draft last night. He was my last pick. And it was some of it, it's a hometown thing. He's from Hudsonville Unity Christian. I live in Zeeland, I'm going to support the local guy. But I do think that he will be an interesting option in the red zone because he is able to go up and get balls that other players can't. And he will have 4 to 6 inches on most cornerbacks that are guarding him. And if you want to put a linebacker on him, well, good luck with that because he's a lot faster and a lot quicker than most linebackers too. So he's going to be, look, I don't expect him to catch a ton of passes, but I do think he's going to come in and catch key passes. It might be 3 catches for 28 yards and a touchdown, but all 3 of those passes are going to get first downs. I think that's going to be his role, and he's also proven capable on special teams. His attitude's fantastic. The older guys love him. It's fun to see him warm up a little bit. Look, he's known for his touchdown celebrations. He didn't get to do a lot at Arkansas, but if you go back in time, he did actually do the headstand like Amon-Ra did last year on one of the few chances that he got to catch the ball. So he did the worm, obviously, in the touchdown catch that he had against Houston in the preseason. And that just, in a dismal game that did get the fans fired up. That was rough. But he's certainly someone that the local fans can love. And he is all in. He's proven to be much faster ahead of the curve than I think anybody expected. And look, going back into the draft, I was one of his biggest advocates. I actually wrote a piece about it at Draft Wire, where he was one of, quote unquote, my guys. And in that I wrote, take him in the 4th or 5th round and see what you got in a year or two. Well, he's blown that expectation away. So it's fantastic for him. He's a good guy, a good family. The Unity people support him very well, as they should. We do get NFL players from the Grand Rapids area and the Kalamazoo area, here in Ottawa County. But to have a guy with that sort of profile and that sort of cachet right away, that's pretty cool, man. And I hope that the local fans can appreciate that and celebrate him.
It's honestly one of my favorite stories. I think we talked about this the last interview, but I talked to him on Steve's show before the draft, and I was basically telling him, like, hey, you profile as a perfect replacement for Tim Patrick, you realize, and I think he was trying to downplay it. He didn't want to get his hopes up. He knew he was going to get taken, but you never know where. But yeah, he's been a great fit, and I think one of the things that gets underrated or kind of discombobulated with the offense is people always want the big name to add into that spot. I remember a couple of years ago, everybody wanted DeAndre Hopkins when he was available. And it's the idea that it needs to be somebody that is okay with that line that you just mentioned. The 3 catches, 28 yards, wants to block, needs to create holes for the rest of the offense, because there's only one ball to go around and there's a lot of guys that they have to feed. And I think Isaac's going to be okay with that. And then when there is maybe more of the target share available for him, I think he's going to potentially thrive under that scenario.
Oh, 100%. And, you brought up the other guys. Amon-Ra St. Brown, first team All-Pro. He's got over 340 catches in the last 3 seasons. You've got Jamison Williams, who paired with Amon-Ra last year. They were the only duo to catch 1,000 yards apiece. There were a couple of teams that had over 800, but nobody had 2 guys over 1,000. And J-Mo looked better this summer than he ever has before. His speed, he's learning how to use it going across the field, aside from just going deep. And I think that the offense that he's in now is a little bit more trusting of him than it was a year ago. And that's fun to watch. Sam LaPorta had a phenomenal summer. And any thoughts of him being like the 1-year wonder as a rookie? Yeah, he's good. He's really good, y'all. They got Monty and Gibbs. Sonic and Knuckles coming out of the backfield. They're both really good running backs. They still have Penei Sewell at tackle. So they'll be able to run the ball. They will not get pressure from that side. It really is a wonderfully schemed offense with a whole lot of premium weapons. And again, I don't think that the national media is focusing as much on that as they're focusing on the guy that they lost. Well, you better pay attention to who's still here, and Isaac's going to be part of that too. And again, it might be he might not catch a pass in a game or two, and that's going to be okay because he does do the other things. You talk about his blocking. That was the first thing that really stood out. Actually, at the Senior Bowl, I was down in Mobile with him. He blocked so well and so enthusiastically, like his life depended on it. And some of the other wide receivers were down there, and they just weren't even trying all that hard. And it was, it really stood out, his work ethic and his attention to detail. And that's something that all the Lions, coaches, players, this is a very attention to every detail sort of team. And that's a Dan Campbell focus, and he certainly fits in with that very well.
Definitely. He's going to be interesting to watch. We appreciate you joining the show, Jeff, and we'll look forward to getting some updates from you throughout the season here.
Oh, absolutely. Anytime you need me, give me a ring.
Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh is brought to you by Mary Freebed, Collectible Insurance Services, West Michigan Eye Care Associates, Eric Hall, DDS, Calder Financial Group, Grand Management, Rydan Investments, JH Realty Partners, and Encore Business Group. Sports Intel with Ryan Walsh airs live Monday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern on Jethro.fm.
Stay informed and stay vigilant.